Welcome to Conejo Valley Visionaries, a weekly podcast spotlighting the people and stories behind your favorite Conejo Valley businesses. I'm your host, Christina Denstead. In today's episode, you'll hear from Collin and Vicki, the dynamic duo behind Moody Rooster and Moody Market and Provisions in Westlake Village. Known for their delicious, locally sourced dishes and warm, inviting atmosphere, they've turned their passion for food into a beloved gathering spot for locals and visitors alike. In this episode, we'll explore their culinary journeys, the inspiration behind Moody Rooster, and how they're making an impact in the community. Before we dive into this conversation, I want to remind you, if you love supporting local businesses, please share this episode with a friend. Spreading the word is a powerful way to help our community thrive. Now, please enjoy this conversation with Collin and Vicki of Moody Rooster. In last week's episode, Tyler Cusick, the owner and CEO of Westlake Yoga Co., shared how much yoga impacted his life, both personally and professionally. And I can relate. I got into yoga when I was living in Brooklyn in the early 2010s, and it too not only changed my physical well-being, but also my mental health. If you've been thinking about giving yoga a try, now's your chance. Tyler is generously offering 10% off a drop-in class when you use code PODCAST at checkout. So visit westlakeyogaco.com and use code PODCAST when you book a drop-in class. Maybe you give hot yoga a try or a non-heated class, also a meditation or a Pilates class. There's so many amazing options at Westlake Yoga Co. And all of the teachers have hundreds of hours of training, which really makes it an easy transition if you're trying yoga out for the first time. So use code PODCAST at westlakeyogaco.com when you book a drop-in class and receive 10% off. Collin, Vicki, thank you so much for being on Conejo Valley Visionaries. I am thrilled to have the founders behind one of my favorite restaurants here, which is Moody Rooster, and one of my listeners' most requested guests. What we like to do here is really start from the beginning. So, Collin, can you share, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I originally wanted to be an artist, and I went to graphic design school for, about 2 years. And then I had a buddy who wanted to be a chef, so he went up to culinary school, and I was just really interested in it. I got him into a pizza place. I used to be a delivery boy and wash dishes and everything. So I got him in there, and he immediately started cooking and making pizzas. And then I started getting a little interested in it. It looked fun. So I started making pizzas with him. He went off to culinary school, and I up in San Francisco, and I was just so interested in it. It was I'm like, what are your knives? This, that, what'd you learn this week and all that stuff. He goes, you should, start cooking. Why don't you start cooking? You're so creative. You'd be really good at it. And I'm like, no, it's too late. I'm already in my career. I was only 20 years old at the time too. So. Right. And so after a while, he ended up moving back down to San Diego, and then he became a chef at this one place. So he wanted me to come work for him. So it doesn't work. Yeah. So, and then, so he calls me up one day. He had a guy not show up. So I went, he goes, come on down and help me. I'm like, no, I can't. And he's like, no, just come down here. And I'm like, all right, fine. So I went down there, and I didn't even know how to put on a chef coat. He's sitting there putting it on me. And then he threw me on the line. And then I'm sitting there, and he goes, just do whatever that guy tells you to do. So I did it, and I went through a night of service, and I had so much adrenaline. I was so focused on what I was doing that at the end of the night, I go, I'm doing this the rest of my life. I love this. So it was so much fun. So
love at first sight, or love at first line. That's pretty impressive. I feel it's either you really like it or you'll never want to do it again. And that's pretty amazing that it was the opposite. What kind of restaurant was it?
It was called Tomatoes. It was like a new American Italian place. Okay. It was kind of new at the time. It was in the early 90s. No, it was actually at Tomatoes. It was at it was down by the sports arena. Oh, okay. It was before I got to the Hyatt.
Oh, okay, got it. Do you remember what the first dish was that you made there, or what you were focused on?
I remember a polenta cake with a bolognese sauce.
Ooh, that's memorable and delicious. Okay. What about you, Vicki? Did you have aspirations to work in the restaurant food service field at any point, or as a chef?
Not as a chef. I started in the restaurant business when I was 16 years old. And, when you start as a hostess at 16 years old, you don't think that's what you're going to do the rest of your life. Although I enjoyed it. And for some reason, I just kept getting drawn back to the restaurant business.
Yeah.
And 14 years of that, going back and forth. And eventually I started as a hostess, and I served, and then I ended up managing. And eventually Collin and I met, and it just felt like this is the direction I'm supposed to go. So we were married, met 20 years ago, married 18 years ago, and we just decided, we'll just move forward and see if we could do our own thing and open up our own place. So, yeah.
And did you meet in San Diego or in California?
We met in California, but in Playa del Rey.
Okay,
So
got it.
Collin ended up coming out this way. He actually trained in Paris, so he didn't finish his story. But
Right, yes.
yeah, so go ahead.
Oh, no, that's a great point. So after you were working at Tomatoes, then how did you continue your culinary career from there?
Well, I ended up getting a job at the Hyatt Hotel down in San Diego, downtown San Diego, where the Embarcadero is. At the time, there was only one tower, and they had this gourmet restaurant inside there. It had all glass windows and a chef table inside the kitchen. It was gorgeous. All the boats were parked out in front, and then it wasn't supposed to be like a hotel restaurant. It was supposed to be, at the time, like cutting edge or whatever. And so they hired this chef from Nice, France. His name was Fabrice Poujon. And so I worked with Fabrice for 3 years. I learned creative cooking like right away. Like that's what even drew me in even more, being creative. And then I told him I wanted to, after 3 years, I'm like, I want to learn like the basis. I think I should go to culinary school. He goes, no, you're not going to go to culinary school. I send you to Europe. And I go, really? And he goes, really? And he goes, you would go? And I go, heck yeah, I would go. And so he sent me to Paris, France. And then I worked there for a year with Gilles Ajuelos at a restaurant called La Bastide Odeon. And it was really cool. I learned all my basics there, butchering and everything. A lot of major sauces, the French sauces, and all that type of stuff. The basis of European style cooking.
Yeah,
I was taught there. So yeah.
That's incredible. So was that a stage? Is that what they call it? Where you're like working at a restaurant and learning underneath the tutelage of an amazing chef?
Yeah, I didn't get paid for a whole year. Yeah.
Yeah,
I pulled
right,
everything
exactly.
I owned
Yes.
and went over there. So yeah, I was a stage. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, did you spend any more time in Europe following that, or did you come back to San Diego or to Playa del Rey and decide you wanted to continue working in a restaurant?
Yeah, I ended up coming back to LA straight from there. And then I went to work for Joachim Spichel with the Patina Group. And back in those days in the 90s, it was like, if you wanted to be a chef, you either worked for Wolfgang Puck or Joachim Spichel. So I went and worked for him, and I learned a lot with him as well. I mean, he was an incredible chef. Yeah.
And do you ever think about what it would have been if you had gone to culinary school, or was your training more than enough to get you where you are right now?
Yes, I'm glad I never went, because I would have had that payment,
the tuition.
The tuition thing, I can't even.
Yeah, of course. No. Right. So I know it. And it sounds like there's no better way to learn than just like in the fire, learning from the best. So that's amazing.
Training is the best.
I always placed myself under really, really great chefs. So, and really worked my way through it. And, I love doing what I did. And sometimes I got beat down, like, especially when I was in France. I mean, the first day was like trying to cut artichokes. And I swear, the first time maybe I wasn't doing it correctly, but the second time I know I was getting it. I kept getting it slapped out of my hand, like slap, do it again, slap, do it again. Like, come on.
So those stories are real. I feel like what we see on TV is actually what was going on in your experience.
Oh yeah. Back in those days. Yeah. Now you can't do that.
Back in the day, definitely was like that. Yeah. That's how the restaurant.
Anything flew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you all met in Playa del Rey, which restaurant were you working at then?
It was called Chloe. It was a really small restaurant. And we changed our menu at the start of every month. So
Oh my
we had
The entire menu.
the entire menu. It was crazy. It was really difficult. It was fun when you nailed, that dish, but sometimes, you want a little time to work, you want to be able to work it out a little bit,
Okay.
So it got difficult. And then we'd have to do a whole tasting every month. That was pretty intense. It was a really small restaurant. But then one day I walked out and I saw this woman sitting there reading a book, eating by herself. And I was like, oh my God.
Oh my goodness.
And then, so I'm standing at the
instant.
hostess stand, and then she's getting up, she's finished eating. And I'm like, oh my God. So she gets up and then she walks toward me. I go, I'm going to say something. She walks right towards me. She looks at me, walks out the door, and started walking down the street. And I was like this.
Oh no.
Couldn't even say it. Thank God she came back a month later, and I remember exactly who she was, and I put on my best comedy effort I've ever had in my whole life.
Oh my gosh. I was not expecting that. I thought you had like run after her, but no, she came back. You came back a month later, Vicki. And like, had you noticed Collin then, or were you just liking the food?
It was love at first sight, really. I mean,
She didn't see me that day, though.
the day I dined in there, I had no idea that, I didn't think anything. I just walked out. And then at the time I was managing Chaya Brasserie, and I wanted to take some classes, and I thought, let me check out this restaurant. I lived right across the street from the restaurant in Playa. I thought, let me go check that out and, work part-time and go to school. So I walked in and they were closed during the day. They were only open for dinner. And right before I left for Chaya, I stopped in and he was in the kitchen and I said, oh, hey, just seeing if you guys are hiring. And we were, he said, yeah, wait at the bar. And he brought an application. I was filling it out and he just said some joke and he had me laugh. And I walked out the door, called my mom right away and said, wow, I met this man. And I don't know, I have this crazy feeling. And then it took us months to finally express how we felt about each other. So, and then that was it.
Oh my gosh, that is like kismet, destiny. That's pretty incredible. Oh my gosh, that makes me like love you guys even more that's how it all started. So from there, how long was it until, or which came first, chicken or the egg? Moved to Conejo Valley to open Moody and then open Moody Rooster, or did you guys have this idea for a restaurant and then decide to open it here?
Well, when we met, of course, every chef, you think their goal, and Collin's goal was to open up a restaurant one day. And that just seemed right to me,
Someday.
We've both been in the business for a long time. And we thought, and we had discussed it with other, restaurateurs, other people that were interested in opening, and it just didn't feel quite right. And it was time for us to buy a house, and we decided to move out into Agora Hills. My family all lives out here, and we're familiar with the area, so we ended up buying a house. And then one day, someday in 2016, the beginning of it, Collin said, I think I want to start looking. I think it's time for us to start. At the time, he was a chef at the Lobster in Santa Monica, and he turned their whole program around and went from a $9 million restaurant to $11 million restaurant. The time he had been there, and
Incredible.
turned things at the time were coming out of a can, and he turned it into farmers market produce, and so definitely brought the level up for the Lobster. And then it was just time to start thinking about our thing. So we eventually found that small little space that you visited. That's now currently the Moody Market and Provisions. And with the little money we had, our money, which, thankfully, when we had our house, we gained some equity in the house, and we just took that and opened up our restaurant. I mean, Collin was sanding tables. We found tables on Craigslist and chairs. The money that we put into the space was all in the kitchen.
Okay.
And
ovens and stoves.
Yeah, just the kitchen.
Was it a restaurant prior to you taking it over?
It was.
Yeah, it was a sushi restaurant. And I had the bar, so we kept the line of the sushi bar, and then we just broke it down and rebuilt it. And then we put tables around it and bar seats.
Yeah, we just maximize as much space as we could because it's so small.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the occupancy there? How many seats?
34.
32.
Oh, 32.
You could squeeze in 34, but
Okay.
Yeah.
So
and what was the idea? Sorry.
No, it was just a really small space, but we just thought, let's just start and see what happens, as we see where it takes us.
What was the idea for the style of restaurant?
Well, it's funny. We started out in my head, I was like, okay, we're out here in Westlake, and people want sandwiches and salads. And
that's what he thought.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So we were already focusing on our starter, the
sourdough starter.
Yeah, the sourdough starter, who we call Dora.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, to make, sourdough bread with no commercial yeast, so we both got into that we started at home and everything.
And we always knew, we always knew we were going to be farm to table because that's just how Collin's always, throughout his whole career, was shopping the farmers markets and making everything in house. So we knew the structure of it all, right? And how we wanted to move forward with it. But, he just thought, I'll appease everybody with perhaps, salads. And he thought he was focusing more towards a lunch trend.
Yeah. And then she goes, what are you doing? She goes, cook the food you want to cook. Who cares?
And the people that like your food will come to you.
Yeah.
Stop thinking about what everybody else wants.
I was like, I can't serve octopus out here. And she's like, yeah, you can. Just do it. Let's just see what happens. Yeah. And so we invited her whole family over and just started cooking food. And everyone's just sitting around eating it and just going, yeah, do that, do this, do that. And then it went from there. And then, thankfully it caught on. We were able to do different things out here, octopus,
veal sweetbreads,
even lamb tongues one time, and just crazy stuff,
Just trying to be creative, things that we like.
Well, I'm glad that you pushed into what truly your personality and your style is. Did you actually launch with sandwiches and then adjust, or was that sort of in the thinking period?
Yeah, well, we didn't advertise at all. We just opened the door. So no one that shopping center was real quiet for before we got there. And then
we just decided one day, we're like, okay, well, how about today feels good. Let's just turn over the Rooster sign we had that said open and close. We're like, let's just do it now. And so we did, and nobody came in. We're like, okay, maybe one or two people just came in to check it out. And then Collin was still struggling, I don't know, I can't figure out exactly, how I want this menu to look. He just needed to feel the space. And so that took a little bit. And like you said, that week we invited my family over, and Collin just was freely cooking things, and it just started feeling good. And he eventually got to the menu he wanted to present. And one day, Lisa McKinnon, who wrote for the Ventura Star, walked in. And we didn't know who she was at the time, but it was one lady in there and photographing every dish she took. She ordered, and she would take the dish and move it to a different table for lighting. And I thought, Collin, I think this is a writer. I'm going to go talk to her. So we spoke, and sure enough, she was, a writer. And she wrote a little tidbit on us and put it in the paper. And then it just started growing, slowly, which was great because we barely had any employees. It was just us and a good friend of mine and two other people that we hired. And it just kind of grew at the right speed as we were hiring people, and it just grew organically. It was just...
I was cooking by myself at first.
He was doing it all on his own.
And even though it's a small restaurant, that's still a lot of seats to be doing that by yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. So eventually we hired, it's the right amount of people, and I don't know, just kind of grew into what it is now.
And how long were you in that smaller space before you moved over to where you are currently?
We moved in 2022 in February. So we started in 2017 in the smaller spot, and then opened in 2022. So we went through COVID, and at that time, the landlords, Taco Bell was going to, they weren't going to renew their lease. And
that was a Taco Bell where the Rooster
was a Taco Bell.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I don't remember that. Okay.
No.
And, of course, COVID happened. We thought, oh, we can't commit to that. How are we going to do that? We don't know what's happening, the state of the world and all that. So they said, all right, just when you're ready, let us know. And then it was time to give them our answer. And we just thought we'll take a chance. And we did.
Yes, it's incredible. And did you think when you first started, did you have aspirations for it to be bigger? Was that the goal, or was it just to have a neighborhood little cafe, if you will?
It was, what was it? It was like starting off, we didn't know what to expect. We were like, let's just see what happens. And of course, while we were in there and we started getting busier, we're like, oh, well, maybe we can expand. Let's say the people next to us are leaving on either side of us. If they happen to go and not renew their lease, we'll take that space and make it a little bigger. So that was the intention. We just thought that's the way it was going to go. And then Taco Bell became available, and we thought, well, that's a nice corner spot with a wraparound patio. But, eventually we had to make that decision. COVID was scary, at the time.
I know. To hear from all of the local restaurants who survived that. I mean, congratulations, because that was such a challenging, I can only imagine, time to be running, especially a restaurant. And to see you come out of it and be able to expand after that, I think that says a lot about the quality of the food and what you guys are putting out there.
I'll tell you, the community was so supportive of all small businesses, like the small mom and pop restaurants. And like for us, we're just so grateful. I mean, people would just buy $1,000 gift certificates, and we're just like, we don't want to use them until like things change again. I mean, just to keep us in business. And they would come and order takeout. And then when we were able to do seating outside, they would sit outside in the frigid cold and still eat out there with heaters on. And
they would bring blankets.
Yeah, they're just cool. Everyone was so supportive.
Right. Have you been wanting to try out the viral lash lift trend? Or maybe ditching the brow gel and going for a brow lamination? Well, this is your sign to give it a try before the holiday season. As a special offer for our listeners, Brittany Carpenter, the owner of Face and Soul Studios in Thousand Oaks, is offering 10% off any of her brow and lash services when you use code PODCAST at checkout. Book your appointment at faceandsoulstudios.com and try out a lash lift, a brow lamination, or maybe even a lash tint. It's time to invest a little bit in your self-care before the holiday season. Enjoy. Well, I always like to know, do you think the Conejo Valley is a good place to start a business?
Absolutely. It absolutely worked for us. I mean, it was just a great spot, a great location to move into, and eventually moving into a bigger spot.
One of the listener questions, and I'm curious too, was how did you come up with the name? Mm-hmm. Was it Collin, your graphic design background skills, obviously with the design, I imagine, but what about the name?
She tells it the best. I'll just say that we wanted something. I wanted something farm sounding. So, cause I wanted something like that. I just wanted to sound like something from the farm in a way. Mm-hmm. And I wanted it to be unpretentious. I just wanted it to be fun and cool. But I think she does the best.
So years ago, I want to say we were still living in the Palisades at the time, and we were discussing, of course, our dream of one day opening up a restaurant. And Collin was working with some Italian guys. There was a place called La Botte, and there were all the boys were from Italy, and there were all men really that worked there.
Yeah,
right?
I was the only American. Yeah.
He was the only American guy in there, but he was really the chef, along with another guy named Luigi. And one day he was working, and one of the guys who worked there, Antonio, was a really funny guy, had said hi to him. Well, Collin was really focused working, and he didn't hear him. So he's like, "Oh, you're so moody. Why are you so moody?" And then dubbed him as Moody. So he came home and told me, and we kind of chuckled about it. And Collin was born the year of the rooster. So my little joke with him is, "You're such a rooster. You're shaped like a rooster." He's got skinny legs, no butt. He's got a barrel chest. And so when he when he came home and said, Antonio called him Moody, I was like, you're the Moody Rooster. That's so funny. That would be such a cool name for a restaurant one day. And we just kind of went back and forth on it. And we're like, okay, we'll hold on to that. And then all of a sudden, within that year, all these restaurants with farm animal names started popping up. And we're like, no, we're not ready for this.
They're taking our idea.
We're taking our idea, right? And then anyway, eventually in 2017, actually when we were putting our idea on paper and we had to start really thinking about, okay, what are we going to name this and how do we want it to look, and putting our business plan together, we thought we were going to go with a different name.
Well, first of all, we ran it by people.
And they're like,
they hated
Moody
it.
Rooster?
Moody
What do you
Rooster.
mean?
What is that?
That's so
Angry
negative.
Rooster. It's like all this stuff. We're like, no,
that's what
it did automatically conjure up food to farm to table, like delicious food.
Well, the way we looked at it was like,
what I'm in the
we
mood
have
to cook.
whatever, what he's in the mood to cook, the mood of the season. So that's how we looked at it. And but when we, like, let's say an older generation, we brought it to my parents and their friends, they're like, Moody Rooster, it just sounds so negative. Mm-hmm. So then we thought, all right, maybe we should name it, because we want a homey feel, we'll name it after the kids. So there's Griffin and Layla, and we call him Griff, and we call her Lou. And we thought,
G.
I'm sorry, we call him G. Yeah. Or Griff. And so we thought, we'll name it G-Lou's. And we incorporated that. We went and did the
people like, what is glue?
That name. And
What's
then people
glue?
call us up and like,
that's a good point.
Yes. So we thought, okay, that's not good. Yeah. And anyway, just so happened to be, we found that space. We were signing our lease. And just came home, my neighbor who knows that Collin was born the year of the rooster, and we talked about the name Moody Rooster. She goes, hey, do you know it's the year of the rooster this year? And we're like, what? Wow. Okay, scratch it all up. This is a sign. The kids will have the name and the corporation, and then we're going to do the DBA as Moody Rooster. It's just a sign. We've got to do it. So we did.
And I mean, never had to look back since. I think people, and now that I know the full context of it, it conjures up so much memory and thought to it. So that's pretty incredible. And you have to go with your, sometimes your first idea is the best idea.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say too, I mean, you mentioned your business plan. Was that, sometimes I ask people, some people would go into it without any business plan, but it sounds like you did that. Was that important as a restaurant having that in place, or just, did you need that to actually get a lease?
Yeah, it was required by the landlords, as they were looking at other candidates. They just wanted to see what our ideas were. Yeah. And I think we got really lucky. I mean, at the time,
we really fell through the cracks because there was a new owner
which was a good thing.
The strip mall.
Right.
Yes. A new owner of the strip mall and of that mall.
That center,
They had
just came in and bought it.
Right. So it just seemed, and they were out of New York. So they just had people out here, like, running it and stuff. But I just think we really did not have enough money, what they normally require in order to, get the space and get a lease going. We just got really lucky. So it really, truly was meant to be.
But I'll tell you this, it really came from our heart, and just the key words, which we live by: farm to table, passion, love. All those things were put in there, like non-pretentious. I think that was what intrigued them. But at the same time, I think they were all going through so much transition. It was like, okay, this fits the style of center we want here. They wanted when they purchased it, their idea was a healthy lifestyle center. And farm to table, I think, was something that they were looking for. And they took a chance on it.
I feel like you guys are now the attraction too. Like that's the kind of the, the foundational space in that mall. Was the farmer's market there when you first opened?
Yes. Yeah, that was another draw.
Okay, so that works out nicely too. That the farm to table, that element is obviously on brand. Or what's surprised you the most about running Moody Rooster? Knowing that you both have decades of restaurant experience, you probably went into it being pretty prepared at the expectation. So has anything surprised you about the whole process?
How we evolved and the community, like you said before, that's really was surprising for me. We really, I mean, they really love what we do. They love my wife, the relationships that my wife has started with all of our guests. And then the part where they want to see something new from the kitchen every week, and be able to do different things, and to be able, like I said earlier, make octopus, or bring in like dry aged, New Yorks that, have been, that the cattle only eats grass fed. It's grass fed and carrot finished. I mean, they're just so excited to see everything that we do and all the different things that we do, and to be able to cook like I was in the city. I can do it out here in the suburbs. That's the biggest surprise for me. Like that, like I can put something down that's, odd and different, and people are going to be like, yeah, I want that. I want to try that.
They trust what he is putting out.
Yeah. Now. And it's really,
which is really cool.
One of my favorite compliments that people give us is that they say they don't have to go down to the city to get food. They can have it right here. So that's my favorite.
That's how I feel too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think another big surprise is hiring.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, trying to find, because we're in the suburbs and the caliber restaurant we are, he comes from the city, trained in Paris and so on and so forth. Finding, young chefs or, ambitious chefs usually want to go down to the city. So trying to get them to come to the suburbs for, a place where it's serious, good food, that's kind of difficult out here for all of us mom and pops trying to hire talent. Yeah. So that's the hardest and the biggest surprise when we opened, I think.
That makes sense. Like the allure of LA, even if the restaurant's not the same caliber, is almost a little bit sort of trumps the being able to work at an incredible restaurant with an amazing chef. Sometimes, sounds like.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's.
How have you been able to navigate that? How have you been able to find people then?
Prayer.
Yeah.
Please.
It's like I lose somebody and then someone else comes through the door, but it's like there's so much stress in between that. Like you're just, oh my God, it's. I feel pretty fortunate right now. I have a lot of people that are very interested in, just making great food, and some people wanting to be chefs, So, I'm really proud of, the crew that I have in the kitchen right now.
Yeah, we've been really lucky. Yeah. Because most of them don't do it for a paycheck. They do it because they really like to do what they're doing. Yeah. And that's what we look for.
Yeah. And it sounds like, Collin, that's how you started out too. You were so inspired by the creativity and just like wanting to learn more. And I can imagine it's kind of a unicorn to find, but once you do, you want to hold on to them or, really probably mentor them as well, I imagine.
I had to this one kid came to me at age, I don't even think he was 18 yet, right before his senior year of high school. He went to Calabasas High, and he was trying to get into all these restaurants, and he ended up emailing me, and I was like, all right, come and talk to me. So we talked, and I said, all right, I'll give you a shot. And so during his high school year, or his senior year, he worked for me like 2-3 days a week, and he still played lacrosse and everything. And this kid just soaked up everything.
He didn't get paid for it.
For a little bit, yeah.
He just wanted to come and check it out. Right. And then he started being more involved, and we're like, okay, we're going to put you on the payroll.
And then so he graduates, and then the next year he almost becomes my sous chef, my secondhand guy, because he's just so smart and in tune with everything that's going on in the kitchen. And I'm teaching him stuff. He eventually started working my station, which is the hardest station in the kitchen. And then, he worked for me about a little over 2 years, and then he goes, it's time for me to move on. And I'm like, oh. And I'm like, of course it is. I go, someone like you have to go work for other chefs.
You have to.
And I was just like, oh. And so he just left about a month ago, and he's been back he's working at a major restaurant in LA in Beverly Hills. And he's back every single day off he has. He comes out and hangs out with us in the kitchen. And he tells me like, this is home base, and he goes, I love it. He goes, but I miss what I miss is the creativity, because there's so much creativity going on in the Moody Rooster, and this big, big restaurant in the city. It's like, it's the same thing over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
So he's just like,
yeah.
I go, but it's really good for you to learn, blah, blah. And he goes, I know. But he goes, this is home base. And that just makes me, he's going to come back.
Like, you feel so good. I know. And how incredible to be able to give him that opportunity and to support his growth.
Absolutely.
Because it sounds like that's like what you experienced too. And to be able to pay that forward, it will come back in spades because of that. So,
right.
Yeah.
What are you guys most proud of with Moody Rooster, or in general?
I would say the staff. What do you think?
Yeah, that's
I would say that.
I would say that too.
My biggest thing being in the front of the house and people walking out is, everybody who takes care of them is like, oh my God, they're so knowledgeable. They're so kind.
Even
people are
bus
hugging
boys,
going
yeah,
out.
right.
That's just our thing anyway.
Right.
We just built this thing on, we just love the community. I'm a hugger, and
we both worked for corporate places, and we just did not want that.
I've worked for both. I've worked for corporate, non-corporate, and I'm like, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. Collin came to the table with what he likes and doesn't like, and we just created. We don't do uniforms. That's just something I just don't believe in, because we want you to feel like you're coming to our house. I know that at the end of the day, you're still getting a bill, but I want you to feel like you're coming in, you're being welcomed warmly, and we're providing hopefully some good soulful food for you, and then you leave and you feel great. That's our goal. And I think a lot of our staff and the people we hire, that's their goal too. So it's
interesting you mentioned the no uniforming, those little like kind of brand elements of a business that maybe I don't, as a guest, think about outright. But now that you say that, it does, it is a space in which you feel just innately comfortable. And it's funny that, you're able to have picked up on those things throughout your career, to know that that's the feel that it can create when you do make certain choices like that.
Yeah. It's amazing when people leave and it's amazing when people leave and say, or they walk in, they're like, oh my God, it feels like I'm in someone's home. That's what I'm most proud of, is that was what we put on paper on day one, when we started the business plan. We want people to feel like they're coming to our house. And when I hear people say it on their own, wow, I just felt like, I was eating even the silverware we buy, and the plates, like grandma's house or a house, your house. And that to me is a compliment. That is what I'm proud of.
Well, and from the people that, myself included, but that frequent your restaurant, it's almost like they're going to their house, because they go so often that they're eating at the restaurant so frequently, which is a good thing to have.
Yeah, no, we have guests that come in multiple times during the week.
Sometimes twice a day.
Yeah, sometimes twice a day we've had them.
Lunch and dinner.
It's amazing.
It's people's kitchen, which it's like their home too. It's just. So I think that's what I'm most proud of, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Service and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Food.
So what about Moody Market and Provisions? How did that idea come about? Speaking of like your kitchen, now it's your pantry almost.
Yeah.
The idea came while I was working at the original Moody Rooster, and I wanted to provide a place. It actually started with the ovens I had, with the thought, like, I got these combi ovens, they're special ovens where you can roast overnight and it controls it and everything. There's many buttons that control how to cook things, and it cooks it to perfection. It adds moisture, and we're able to cook our bread in there without having to spray water inside there. So it came from the ovens, and I thought it'd be great to have roast. You cook them overnight, and then they're all ready for you in the morning. You come in, you just put them out, and then people can buy it by the pound or the ounces or pound, or turn it into sandwiches or farm bowls. And that's what we decided to do. And we thought that would be great, for people to come and get, farmers market vegetables, sustainable roasts, and, or proteins and stuff, meat that's good for you, and vegetables that are good for you, and dips and spreads and all that stuff. We thought it'd be great just to have something
Gourmet on the go.
Yeah, gourmet on the go, where you could just load up your house, fill up your refrigerator and snack on good food for you, and or have dinner parties, or
We just thought that space would, as we were transitioning into the other space, we thought this would be a great size for that sort of model, business model. And, thankfully, I mean, we're doing it, and it's what was hard about it was, when we first opened the restaurant, we thought, okay, let's settle in here, and then we'll soon then work on the other place. It's going to be a quick remodel. And unfortunately, that space took a long time for us to open. And it was a big hit for us because we continued paying rent on the space, and there's no revenue coming in because the city had to go through the whole process of, since we changed the concept, we had to change the equipment. We had to add more plumbing and more electricity and things that we had no idea. As we were putting this new little business plan together, we had no idea that this was anything that was going to come up for us. We thought it was going to be a quick remodel. Well, a year and a half later, after paying rent,
it was a rebuild. Yeah,
it was a whole rebuild. So we lost a lot. So now we're trying to, get this business up and running as it is, but we're far behind now.
Well, I think, what you guys are doing is truly unique in my eyes to the area. I haven't seen anything like that where it's the farm to table grab and go. I know when I was in there, when I first met you, Collin, I likened it to Justa. I moved from Venice, and as another ex-plant, like it reminds me of that style of high quality, delicious, like easy to grab food that you're going to feel good eating when you don't have time to sit down at the restaurant, or you are a busy parent or something. So, I feel like it is a needed type of market in the area where people just want to go and get something healthy, not healthy, but like good for you in a way, food that, is chef created too.
Yeah, it's just real food. There's, again, all local farming. It's all sustainably sourced. Everything is made in-house, with the exception of some packaged items we, bring in and put on the shelves. But everything,
that's the provisions part.
Everything is just like the same concept as the Rooster, same philosophy, made with passion and love.
What do you see as the vision for Moody Rooster? Obviously, you now have the marketing provisions. You've got Moody Rooster, the restaurant. Are you going to expand further, or really double down on what you've already got going on?
I don't know. To be determined. We'll see what happens. We're in it, and we'll see where it takes us. We just opened both places in 2 years, so we're still trying to get that settled. And like we said, we're just still trying to grow this Moody market. So we'll see where it all leads. If this concept does well, we might open a couple more of those. The restaurant, I think this would be our last restaurant that we would open.
Yeah, probably.
Right? I don't know. But we're just keeping it open. Yeah. We'll see. We're like one day at a time, right?
Yeah, well, you've done a lot in 2 years. So I think it's fair to sit in that and enjoy that. And then as you continue looking outwards. Okay, so I've got a couple rapid fire questions to round things out. So for each of you, what is your favorite menu item at Moody Rooster?
That's a tough one for me.
The newest one.
Yeah, that's my answer too. The newest, because we eat there every single day, with the exception of maybe Sundays and Mondays. But for me, anytime anyone asks me what's your favorite thing, I'm like, the newest thing that he makes is my favorite, because it's just fun. It's just new.
Creating something new.
But I mean, the carrots are still one of my favorites. The flat iron, the octopus, these are some go-tos. The little gem salad, I think, is delicious. The seasonal fruit salad. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I don't have a favorite of anything. So It really is a new thing for me.
How often are you adding new items to the menu?
Usually once a week, we
Okay.
change something. Sometimes we'll bring back something that was,
Because we're seasonal,
yeah.
you could go
I mean,
back.
we definitely bring back, like, take for instance the cornbread. Every time corn's in season, we bring back the cornbread because it has fresh corn in it, and that goes over really well. Yeah.
The carrot cake, the
Carrot
passion
cake,
fruit
yeah.
frosting
We
that
just do it.
comes
Yeah,
back
we do a
every
lot of.
year.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff like that.
We
Yeah.
do. It's just a seasonal place. So, I mean, but the thing about Collin is he just, there's so many times I'm like, we've been doing this for 7 years, if like he has a creative block, I'm like, just go back to what you've done before. And he's just like, I just want to create something new. I'm like, okay, but you have a whole menu, years of menus. And, he's just like that. So that's what makes it
Yeah.
exciting.
Right. And the creativity still drives it, which is amazing
Yeah.
for how long you've been doing it too.
And then he says, you don't do one thing a week, you change multiple things in a week.
We change.
Yeah. So like what he typically does is, starting Thursday into the weekend, he'll start changing, some things on the farm items. He'll do maybe a new vegetable or salad or dessert, like things just kind of, again, what he's in the mood to do.
And fish usually changes.
Fish changes
a couple
almost
times
on a daily.
week. Yeah. So.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, the fish item
Keeps it fluid.
is whatever is fresh out there right now is what he'll bring in. What's available? What's available and fresh. He's got a good rapport with his fish guy, and he'll tell him what he has, and he'll select it, and we'll get it for that next day. And then there's something new on the menu for a day or two, depending on when that runs out, or if it's something that is a hit and there's a lot more of it, he'll order more of it and get that in every day. So until we're done with it.
This might be more of like an inside baseball question, but I am curious. With distributors like your fishmonger, these people living in the suburbs, does that impact your access to certain things? Are they more hesitant to work with restaurants that are not in LA, or are you, because, it's just I'm curious about that.
At times, sometimes there's the delivery stuff, like, but, there's more and more people out here, or more and more restaurants out here. So more and more of those guys are coming out here. I see those trucks all over the place. Mm-hmm. And I feel like, I'm bringing, like, for instance, the Truffle Brothers. Those guys started just in LA. And in their car, they had like a station wagon, and they would bring around truffles to all the Italian restaurants and the major restaurants. And then when we first came out here, I'm like, oh man, I want to get their Parmesan. I want to get their truffle oil. I want to get their truffles, and I wanted to get that stuff. And I was like, I call them up and I said, look, I go, I'll meet you down in, are you delivering to Malibu, to like Nobu or whatever? Mm-hmm. Like, yeah. And then they're like, we can deliver to you. And I'm like, you can? They go, yeah, we go to a few restaurants up there anyway. So we just go up there on Tuesdays. So I just have to deal with certain days those trucks come out here. So a few of the vendors, I have to have orders in a certain time the day before, and they'll do like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and another one does just Tuesdays. They only come out here, the specialty stuff. So there's a few. Sonia Toscano with Ivan, they only deliver on Tuesdays and Fridays. It's that kind of thing. So, but I don't think it's too bad. I have all my vendors, salesmen, reps, whatever. It's always been about relationships with them. And, just because someone comes to me and says, oh, I have this for, 20 cents cheaper a pound, you should take this. I'll never do that, because I'll stick with that rep, because they know the stuff that I like. So when they get it in, they're going to call me up and say, hey, I have black bass from, North Carolina. I know you love that. Do you want to order some? Like, yes, I do, So it's about relationships with me. And a lot of my reps I've known for my fish rep. I've known them since 2001. So I've known them over 20 years, So, and it's really.
I think what you miss the most too is what Santa Monica Farmers Market.
That part, yes.
Yeah, that's the hardest part.
Right, that's the biggest and best market on Wednesdays. Santa Monica Farmers Market. I've been to that. I mean, I used to go to that religiously for over 20 years. And I don't go to that anymore. But having relationships with a few of those farmers, the ones that are up in Oxnard, they'll deliver to me, which is great. And then we also have the farmers market in the parking lot. And so I created new relationships. And other farmers.
Local farmers markets and farms.
So,
it's nice to have farms out here too.
Yeah.
I was right. We're in the agricultural hub, or at least very close to it. So there's a lot at your fingertips too.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I go up to Underwood, twice a week and buy whatever they're growing,
Yeah. So it is nice to have that resource close by. So what do you guys, if you're not working, what is your favorite thing to do in the Conejo Valley? If you have time, I know maybe that's impossible.
We're home.
Yeah.
Well, we don't have anything to do. There's laundry. There's, and then, look at, typically if we go out to eat, we like ethnic foods usually. Yeah. So, Asian food and, we look for stuff like that. We rarely go out to the city. Of course, we'd like to have more time to do that stuff, but we just stay home and he cooks at home. Yeah. So
that works.
I know.
What is one piece of advice you would give to first-time entrepreneurs?
Oh my goodness.
Be ready for more costs than you think. Be ready for taxes and
oh my goodness.
Insurances. There's a lot more cost than you think. Yeah. Especially in the restaurant business.
We only know, entrepreneur, like the restaurant business. Yeah, so, right. For us, it's like, people always say, why you guys are so successful? Yes, we are, right? But at the bottom line, it's a restaurant. And there's a lot of perishable, it's just a lot of waste.
There's not a lot of waste. It's working to not have a lot of waste.
You work to not have a lot of waste. Yeah. But, everything just adds up at the end of the day. It's...
Also, what we could say is that make sure you love what you do. If you're going to do this, make sure you love it, because then you'll want to do it every day. Because no matter what business it is, you're even when you're home, you're still working. It becomes your life.
Yeah. People like you say, what do you do? I'm like, this is what we do. This is our life. We're there, we entertain, and thankfully we like what we do. And yes, we do take some time off for vacations. But when we're not vacationing, which is not often, we're doing that, and we love it. And we have 2 places now, and we used to have Sundays that of course we'd have to visit the restaurant and go to the farmers market and stuff like that. But now we have another space, and so we're busy doing that. Yeah, we're very hands-on.
When you love what you do, though, I guess they say it doesn't feel like work, or at least you get to enjoy it. So that is a good piece of advice. Well, thank you both so much for so much of your time. Congratulations on everything you've been able to accomplish in such a short amount of time. I cannot wait to see how Market and Provisions continues to flourish, and obviously the restaurant. So thank you for this and sharing your story, and for adding so much to the Conejo Valley community. It means, I think, all of us really appreciate what you're doing. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for reaching out to us and doing this with us.
Thanks for having us.
That's an honor.
Absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
Make sure to subscribe to Conejo Valley Visionaries wherever you listen to podcasts, so that you never miss an episode. And follow us at Conejo Valley Visionaries on Instagram. If you want to share your visionary story on the podcast, send us a DM. We are always open to guest nominations. This episode was produced by Christina Denstead and Justin K. Sloan. Conejo Valley Visionaries is edited by Justin K. Sloan and J. Sloan Productions.